row of coffee cups lined Tristan's tiny kitchen counter, evidence of another sleepless night. The email had arrived at midnight, as so many spam messages did, promising a free trial of the next big streaming sensation. The catch: the subscription was brand new, loaded with original content, and purported to outdo every competitor. Half awake, Tristan had clicked through out of curiosity. He hadn't expected that one impulsive moment to upend his life completely. He tapped his phone the following morning, bleary-eyed, to watch the first episodes offered by the service. The interface looked similar enough to every other platform he had tried, though it had a strange swirling gold-tinged logo in the top left corner. The tagline read, "Granting you more than entertainment." He assumed it was just marketing fluff. Once he pressed play, the first few minutes passed uneventfully, though the show, a new mystery series, was surprisingly captivating. The first ad break caught him off guard. Unlike typical commercials, this one didn't showcase cars or deodorants. Instead, it featured a cryptic code scrawling across a dusty parchment background. A deep, resonant voice announced, "You have 5 seconds to share your truest desire. Make your wish." Whether out of curiosity, a half-joke, or some impulse he couldn't name, Tristan mumbled into the silence, "I want my rent paid this month." He wished it were that simple. Then came a second or two where the flaming letters flickered on screen. Wish granted. The show resumed as if nothing had happened. He chided himself over the thought that anything could come of it. A few hours later, his phone pinged with a banking notification, a large deposit courtesy of his workplace, labeled salary adjustment. It was double his usual take-home pay, enough to cover his rent. He stared at his phone, disbelieving. Maybe the company had made an accounting error, or someone had gotten philanthropic with a bonus. Regardless, he wasn't going to complain. That night, Tristan told his best friend Malia about the strange occurrence. They huddled over takeout in her cramped apartment. "Are you seriously claiming that some streaming service gave you your wish?" she asked, arching an eyebrow in skepticism. "I know how insane it sounds," he admitted. "I can't prove it wasn't some glitch at work, but I'm telling you it was too coincidental. The ad asked me to say my wish out loud. I did, and now my rent's magically covered." Maya laughed, waving a piece of steamed broccoli like a pointer. "Okay, so let's assume for a second you're onto something. You going to tempt fate again?" He shrugged, swirling a piece of tofu in sauce. "Not sure if I even should. But I'm curious." "Wouldn't you be?" "Obviously. If it's real, it's a gold mine. But I've watched enough horror movies to know that deals like that always come with big strings attached." They decided to experiment. 5 minutes later, they fired up her laptop, unsubscribed from her old streaming service, and signed her up for the new one using Tristan's link. Within moments, it loaded the same swirling logo. They picked a random comedic series, something light-hearted to ease any tension. The second the ad break arrived, the same ominous voice boomed, "Make your wish." Maya glanced at Tristan, then raised an eyebrow conspiratorially. "I want a brand new top-of-the-line camera," she said, though her voice was playful. In bold letters, the screen flashed, "Wish granted." The show continued without fanfare. Minutes later, Maya's phone vibrated. An email from a well-known tech retailer confirmed her shipping address. The camera she'd always dreamed of was being processed. There was no payment information on the order, just a note, paid in full. The pair exchanged wide-eyed stares, hearts thumping with mingled excitement and anxiety. After the initial surge of euphoria, a creeping thought settled in Tristan's mind. Was it truly free? Every law he'd ever read about djinn and wishes warned about consequences. Oddly enough, neither he nor Maya had noticed any price to their brand-new gifts. No weird sapping of energy, no personal catastrophe. Not yet. They experimented with the streaming service over the next few days, each session offering the same ad spot, an invitation to speak a wish, followed by a promise that it would be granted. Subscribers across the internet started posting about miraculous deliveries, accidental pay raises, and improbable good luck. The service skyrocketed in popularity. News outlets labeled it the strangest new promotional strategy. But nobody knew the source behind it, and the platform's customer support line only offered a bizarre repeating statement. Our sole mission is to fulfill your deepest desires. Over the ensuing weeks, Tristan noticed subtle cracks in the facade. He saw a co-worker, Roderick, who had also subscribed, race excitedly into the office with news that he'd wished for a winning lottery ticket. He'd won big. Then, that same afternoon, Roderick was summoned for a phone call and never returned to his desk. Rumors whispered that he'd gone missing. Another friend boasted online about wishing to become a top model. She landed multiple casting calls, but soon found her reflection in the mirror changing, as if her face rearranged itself daily, leaving her disoriented. Nobody believed her, and she sank into panic. Tristan found that these strange distortions always traced back to those who used the wish feature most often. It was as if every gift tore at something intangible within them. Desperate for answers, Tristan put his ear to the ground. He discovered ancient references in dusty corners of the internet. Stories about a powerful Djinni that thrived on granting twisted gifts. Legends claimed that, after repeated wishes, the Djinni would exact a toll on the wisher's soul. The more the wisher indulged, the more the creature's power grew. Lacking physical freedom, it needed a conduit, and in this modern age, it had chosen to embed itself in a streaming service, ensuring near-universal access to unsuspecting humans who would line up to speak their greed directly into its digital lair. Maya was skeptical of the more mystical aspects of Tristan's research. How can a legend from 1,000 years ago transform into data that lives on our screens? He shrugged, face lined with stress. Jinn are said to be formless. They can habit lamps, rings, or, apparently, the internet. Once they forge a pact, it's not easy to break. I think each wish we make is fueling its power, and possibly cursing us. Then we should just cancel our subscriptions, Maya reasoned. Problem solved. What if it's not that simple? He replied. I don't think the Djinni can keep granting wishes without a price. My guess is that the ad break is designed to entice people into making bigger and bigger requests. Eventually, it collects its due. Looking at the camera in her living room corner, Maya swallowed hard. All right, maybe I'm spooked, but I'll call the shipping company to return that camera, and let's never use that service again. They agreed to go cold turkey on the platform. Yet curiosity nagged at Tristan, especially as ominous news headlines rolled in. High school student wishes for perfect grades, vanishes after finals. Controversial politician's wish for power ends in tragic incident. The pattern was there, glaring. The public was enthralled by the phenomenon, clamoring for the positivity of surprise windfalls, ignoring cautionary tales. Late one night, as Tristan lay awake, an idea struck him. If the Djinni existed to harvest misguided wishes, perhaps someone could wish it dormant or sealed. Traditional legend spoke of imprisoning Djinn in bottles or objects. What if they could turn the creature's power on itself, force it into a digital container? But it would require subverting its own terms. A wish given during the ad break, ironically used to bind the Djinni once more. The question was whether such a meta-wish would backfire catastrophically. He called Maya early the next morning to propose the plan. One of us has to do it, he told her. But it has to be the last wish the Djinni expects, something that'll lock it back into whatever lamp it's used to being in, or maybe cast it out of this streaming service altogether. Maya hesitated. The memory of the camera weighed on her mind. How do we not end up twisted by our own words? It's this creature's specialty. We just have to word it carefully. Find some precise incantation. Or maybe it's simpler than that. I wish for you, the Djinni, to return to your eternal slumber, never to leech off humanity again. Something to that effect. They spent hours drafting variants of the wish, It was the strangest writing session of Tristan's life. Each line had to be ironclad, free of loopholes. They tested synonyms, structured disclaimers, and added clarifications. By nightfall, they had a single, typed-out sentence they believed might do the trick. Despite their optimism, fear lingered. After all, the Djinni fed on human greed and longing. They had to make sure that, when the ad break arrived, they would speak the words with absolute conviction. If they faltered or gave way to any other desire, the plan could fail. Moreover, the streaming service had grown so large and so popular that it seemed unstoppable. Could one precise wish sever the entire user base from the Djinni's lure? They set up in Tristan's apartment, laptop open, the typed text displayed in large font. Maya's hands trembled. "You sure about this?" Tristan exhaled slowly. "We've come too far to back out. We have to try something." He clicked on the streaming app, selected a random documentary, and waited. The opening scenes flashed by, their pulses pounded as the gold-hued logo subtly appeared in the corner. Then, in that sinister, crackling voice, "Make your wish!" The swirling letters glowed in the center of the screen. Maya clenched her fists. Tristan cleared his throat, reading from the text on his screen. "I wish for you, the Djinni, bound to this streaming service, to be stripped of all power and returned to eternal slumber, never to exploit human desire or cause harm again." They watched the screen, breath held. The swirling gold flashed a deep crimson for an instant. Then came the inevitable response. Wish granted. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. The documentary resumed. They looked at each other uncertainly, questioning whether their gambit had worked. As the minutes dragged on, there were no immediate signs of cataclysm, nor signs of victory. Glancing at the phone in Tristan's hand, though, they saw the streaming icon flicker oddly. Then the app closed abruptly, glitching out. When Tristan tried to relaunch it, an error message popped up. It read, "Service unavailable. Please try again later." Word of the outage spread quickly across social media. Millions of people complaining they couldn't access their shows. Panic threads sprouted on various forums. Some said their wishes had abruptly turned on them, while others reported bizarre digital anomalies like their devices rebooting endlessly or spouting cryptic lines of code. Everyone was locked out. The company offered strained apologies about network difficulties, but no real explanation. For 2 days, the service remained down. Tristan's phone was quiet during that time. No supernatural deposits in his account, no ominous voice. The conspiratorial corners of the internet hypothesized everything from a government crackdown to a global spiritual reset. Some were relieved, others enraged. A rumor circulated about unstoppable chaos that the Djinni's partial power meltdown was causing. But Tristan found neither chaos nor relief, just a normally functioning world, minus a streaming platform. Could it be that easy? Maya visited day 3, stepping over Tristan's coffee cups and clutter. "Heard the service just came back online," she said grimly. "But the wish screen might be gone." He pulled out his phone, hands unsteady. The app's icon was back, slightly changed, now more of a dull silver color than the bright gold it had been. He pressed the icon, half dreading some monstrous re-emergence. Logging in, they discovered the entire interface had changed. It now looked like any generic entertainment platform with no references to granting wishes, no swirling text or ominous voice. They scrolled through categories. The content remained, but the Make Your Wish ad break was conspicuously missing. Testing it further, they played a random action film. A normal commercial about snack foods appeared. Then, mid-ad, the screen distorted briefly. Their hearts lurched. But the glitch resolved, replaced by an ordinary actor in a jingle. No voice demanded a wish. By the time the film resumed, they dared to hope that their carefully worded invocation had banished the Djinni once and for all. However, in corners no one else seemed to notice. A faint sense of dread remained. Tristan recalled the stories of those who had vanished or faced ruin after their wishes. What about them? Were their fates sealed? One night, piling through discussion boards, he found worried family members of missing subscribers. He found stories that sounded heartbreakingly final, but nobody had stepped forward with resolution. Without any official system to address supernatural events, families were left to accept everyday tragedies as the only explanation. Still, the daily news cycle moved on from the streaming phenomenon, focusing on the next big scandal. Life resumed for most. Roderick's desk at Tristan's workplace was overtaken by a new hire. Tristan's boss gave a rehearsed speech about unfortunate circumstances. Meanwhile, Maya's new camera remained on a shelf, all attempts to return it thwarted by glitchy shipping labels. She started using it for photography, half worried that each click might dredge up something terrifying. But no anomalies surfaced. It functioned like any other camera. Weeks later, Tristan strolled through his neighborhood, checking email on his phone. A message from customer support at the streaming platform caught his eye. A surge of panic welled. He hadn't even realized he was still on the mailing list. Stepping aside from the flow of pedestrians, he found the subject line read, "We apologize for the inconvenience." For a moment, he debated deleting it. Curiosity won out. The email explained the service's technical difficulties had led to a mass subscriber freeze. It offered a discount for returning members. Nowhere did it mention the wishes feature or the earlier ad breaks. The message ended with, "We look forward to serving your entertainment needs once again. We promise no more interruptions." Tristan scrolled to the bottom to unsubscribe, but something about the final sign-off gave him a pause. The wording was innocuously corporate, but embedded in the email's footer, partially obscured by disclaimers, he noticed a symbol, a stylized lamp with faint, swirling ribbons. That old gold emblem. His gut twisted. He dashed to Maya's place, phone in hand. She welcomed him, confusion etched on her face. "What's going on?" she asked. He showed her the email. "It's still there," he murmured, tapping the lamp symbol. As if reacting to his touch, the phone screen flared momentarily, not enough to produce any audible voice or clear message, but a flicker, a presence. "We forced it into dormancy with our wish," he continued, voice tense. "But a Djinni is cunning, especially if we didn't account for every loophole. Maybe we just diminished it, or locked it away with an expiration date." "Then it's trying to re-emerge by luring people to watch again?" Maya concluded. "But why not attack us for trying to banish it?" "I suspect it can't retaliate overtly," Tristan said, replaying lore in his mind. "Because we specifically willed it to remain powerless. That might be part of the entrapment. But if we or anyone else cracks that barrier, any new form of greed or an unintentional wish, maybe it can slip through the cracks." They spent hours debating whether they had an obligation to warn the world, but how to prove the streaming service held a real Djinni? The fiasco of a few months prior had largely been dismissed. People became suspicious of the extreme claims. Many believed it was a marketing stunt gone wrong. Without any major catastrophes happening now, the public wasn't likely to listen. "Still," Maya said, "we at least can post cautionary notes online, gather anecdotes from old subscribers, see if any might share their experiences. And we can challenge the company's official narrative." Tristan agreed. "Let's do what we can. Even if we only stop a handful of people from falling into the trap, that's something." They drafted careful posts, avoiding mention of the supernatural at first, focusing on how the streaming service had once claimed to grant wishes but had horrifying side effects. They cited news stories, missing persons, and financial anomalies. The threads gained modest traction. A handful of worried voices chimed in, acknowledging unusual experiences. But for the most part, the public scrolled by, uninterested. The hype had died down. Days stretched into a few months. During that time, Tristan began building a new routine, letting go of the anxious vigilance that the Djinni might spark to life. He took up running in the mornings, discovered new hobbies, and found that his finances were stable enough to survive without magical rent payments. The only real sign of the ordeal was the occasional pang of memory when he scrolled past that dull silver icon on his phone. Maya, too, poured her energy into photography, ironically using her wished-for camera. She found she had a real knack for capturing city life, the small moments of everyday magic that required no otherworldly intervention. In the back of their minds, they remained braced for a resurgence of the Djinni, but each day that passed quietly felt like a small victory. Eventually, an unanticipated letter arrived in the mail for Tristan. It bore an older style of calligraphy on the envelope, no postage, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of parchment, faintly smelling of candle smoke. The text read, "Your words were strong enough to chain me, but your hearts flicker with doubt. Your world is vast, and you cannot watch every screen. Remain watchful in the afterimage of each frame." No signature. The letter ended abruptly. He reread it multiple times, goosebumps prickling. When he took it to Maya, she seemed equally uneasy. They couldn't trace who had delivered it. If it was from the Djinni, they had just received a grim warning. Perhaps it was reminding them, and by extension reminding us all, that so long as there is a spark of human desire left unquenched, there's a crack in which it might slip through. They kept the letter in Tristan's drawer, among old receipts and phone charges. Some days he considered burning it, as if that might eradicate the threat. But an inkling of caution urged him to keep it, lest destroying it might make things worse. Over time, the memory of the entire saga became less raw, though never entirely forgotten. On occasional evenings, Tristan would think about how the world had changed during those few months when wishes flowed freely. Even though the platform had returned to normal, an undercurrent of longing remained in everyday life. People still wanted quick solutions, easy luck, the path of least resistance. That primal hunger wouldn't go away, not in a year or a century. But for now, the streaming service's dark power had dimmed, no longer echoing across millions of screens. Maya once posited a philosophical angle. Humans always dream for shortcuts. Maybe we have to balance that with responsibility. If we're careful, no Djinni can exploit us. But as soon as we forget caution, he's ready to slip back in. Sort of a reflection on how we must watch ourselves. Tristan nodded. He realized that might be the only real defense. Personal restraint. The final twist in the entire ordeal wasn't a dramatic battle with spells or swords, but a quiet acceptance of the danger of seeking easy wishes. In daily life, maybe that was a more challenging war to wage. Over time, new streaming platforms arose, overshadowing the memory of that bizarre brand. People rarely spoke of the fleeting era of twisted wishes or the rumors of a Djinni fueling them. The few mentioners were cast as conspiracy theorists, yet Tristan and Maya, along with those who had glimpsed the truth, remained ever watchful. They used the internet the way everyone else did, but they never again treated an ad break or a pop-up lightly. They had seen proof that sometimes what you ask for might just be granted, at a devastating price. And so they lived, forging modest hopes and real achievements one day at a time. Outside, neon signs glowed in the city night, reminding them of how easy it was to be lured by the next bright promise. Within their hearts, however, they kindled a more humble flame, one that welcomed the ordinary strivings of everyday life, untainted by illusions of an effortless fix. In that unadorned acceptance, they found an unexpected freedom, and for as long as they could manage, they would guard that precious sense of balance, knowing the Djinni's presence lay curled somewhere in the digital ether, waiting for any chance to thrive on a single whispered wish.